Nvidia stock investors had a really great past few days, especially as we recently got a lot of big tech companies report earnings. And the story is pretty much all the same amongst all big players. AI market is still high, and capital expenditure for AI servers is going to continue. Now, I do want to say, while there's not any crazy earnings this week, I think this week can be a very, very volatile week for Nvidia because there are some things that could happen that I am seeing reports popping up already. So let's take a closer look in today's episode.
I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for their subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
All right, so the first thing I want to do is I just wanted to kind of look at what the overnight action was happening for Nvidia. Just remember, this overnight action is extremely low volume, but I just kind of wanted to see what the market was feeling at the moment. And we can see, as I am recording, Nvidia is down roughly about 1% overnight. Now, before I want to take a closer look at some of the big news that maybe Nvidia investors should consider, I think there are three earnings that maybe some Nvidia investors are going to want to listen to. Again, I think we had all the big customers for Nvidia already report earnings, so we already continue to know that the AI story is strong. Now it's kind of more of just even more evidence to that could kind of excite Nvidia investors. And the first one would be, two of them are on Tuesday after the market closes. The first one is Supermicro. So Supermicro already gave us weak preliminary results. I'm not going to talk about them anymore, but what I believe could be bullish is if this company still give us great guidance for the next fiscal year. So the next fiscal year is actually just a few quarters away. Supermicro's fiscal year is a lot earlier than the calendar year. They're about to report their quarter three for this fiscal year. So you can kind of see how their next fiscal year is a lot closer than the calendar year. And last quarter, they did mention some crazy revenue growth. So in my opinion, if they kind of double down on that previous guidance that they gave for next fiscal year, or kind of just more bullish sentiments for the AI space, that can definitely create a nice bullish sentiment for Nvidia stock. Now, the second one on Tuesday, I think, is AMD. I did do a video on that before as well earlier this morning. If you want to learn more about AMD, the only thing I could say is AMD, if they share maybe a little bit more information about the AI space, or kind of say anything bullish about maybe how the AI market is growing, maybe how some of the demands are seeing, we also get to finally hear a company that's really more closely to Nvidia, especially with the AI space and with a lot of the AI chips. So what are they seeing with kind of some of these rules that are coming out with these exports, with these tariffs, the AI diffusion rule? I think this is going to be a great company that can give us a lot of information there. And if it is some nice bullish information, obviously it can trickle down to Nvidia. Unfortunately, if it looks to be a little bearish, it could also trickle down some negative effects. So I think those are the two players that can definitely give us some nice important information for Nvidia shareholders. Now on Wednesday, the company that I believe maybe could give us some more information or some more bullish or bearish takes, depending on what they do, is going to be Vistra Energy. This is ticker VST. This is more of a utilities company, but they are definitely seeing a nice amount of tailwinds impacting kind of they definitely seen kind of that tailwind of the AI market and AI data center. So they can give us maybe a great indication of how long-term planning is for a lot of these AI data centers, for a lot of these AI server infrastructure solutions. So I think Vistra Energy could be another one that could provide some bullish sentiment for the overall stock market. Now, these are just earnings. I think the biggest thing that could impact the overall market is I was kind of just surfing through X and online, and there was a report that some are expecting that the United States is going to announce details of semiconductor tariffs on Wednesday 7th. So that's only that's only a few days from now. I almost didn't do the math correctly there. But remember, for those that are not familiar, right now semiconductors are exempt from reciprocal tariffs in a lot of these places. What they're not exempt for is kind of like that base tariffs that is hitting a lot of different countries. Like, for example, for China, is that 25%, I believe. I forget what the actual number is. But they're exempt from the massive 100+% reciprocal tariffs. They're not exempt from those other base tariffs. Now, if this is true, Obviously, if we get maybe more of a harsher tariffs than we're at right now, it could create some form of a bearish sentiment towards semiconductor investors, especially like Nvidia. The second thing is obviously the vice versa. If we actually maybe get to see a little easing in some of these tariffs, then that can be some really, really great news for the semiconductor companies and obviously semiconductor, which is the biggest semiconductor stock at the moment. So Wednesday, again, these are just reports of what we're hearing online right now, not necessarily true, but it is something to keep a closer eye on. And in just the past few hours, it seems like the Trump administration has been talking a little bit more about policy. So it is likely. It's not impossible, right? That's all I'm going to say. It's not impossible for us to hear some information later this week about the semiconductor tariffs and stuff like that. So if that does happen, I do believe a lot of volatility will come to the semiconductor space. Now, while this isn't this week, the AI diffusion rule is intended to go in effect May 15th. So that's actually next week from now. But the Trump administration and maybe some people were hoping that there might be some changes to it. If there are some changes to it, it could possibly happen this week. Now, for those that are not familiar with the AI diffusion rule, this is an export restriction rule that came from the Biden administration, but there haven't been any changes. In theory, that most likely means that the Trump administration is in favor of this. So, these AI diffusion rule kind of breaks down the world into three tiers. Tier one is US plus 18 close allies, and these 19 countries in general, including the United States, could buy as many AI chips as they want freely. Then tier two is about 150 middle tier countries. They face strict per country and aggregated caps, so you can only buy X amount of chips on these regions. And then there's tier three, which are kind of like the enemies of the United States or states that are embargoed right now and are almost completely blocked from buying any types of chips. Now, for tier two buyers, you can only buy X amount of chips per year if you're buying some massive GPU orders at once. There are some exemptions with this that might change, but if you might do small orders over time, you can actually bypass a lot of these exceptions. So something to think about there, how maybe that could be a loophole in the future and how maybe things like those loopholes are what's going to get changed and it could be stricter. The other thing is these types of export restrictions adds a form of eye onto a lot of companies or companies where the US government can actually go to a lot of these cloud players and say, hey, look, show me where this cloud compute is being used. Who is the customer of this cloud solution? So like that, it helps understand that the cloud market is not being used by some entity, maybe in the tier three market or the tier three space. There's also some other rules that kind of limit how much compute totally can go into tier two countries. For example, only 25% of total AI compute for big players can go outside of tier one. So if you want to invest in the AI infrastructure, you're going to want to invest in a lot of tier one countries, which tend to be a little bit more expensive. Now, obviously, NVIDIA investors are not excited about this too much because one, it does kind of shrink the addressable market. Tier two accounts for a big share of NVIDIA's data center growth, places like Brazil, India, etc. And kind of having more paperwork can kind of reduce a lot of the reasoning to go with NVIDIA products and can push to maybe go to a China-made alternative. The deal size limits also kind of create kind of some headway for some big players buying a lot of GPUs. This is kind of a way, and Jensen believes that this is AI diffusion rule is something that's going to push the market more into Chinese technology instead. So again, this is not expected to go on this week. This is expected to go on next week. But if there are some changes, I think it's safe to assume that those changes should happen at least within the next few days. So it is possible for us to hear stuff about that. Now, again, these, in my opinion, are going to create volatility segments into the semiconductor space. The main reason I say volatility is I don't know where the current administration is going to go with any of these directions, with the tariffs, with the AI diffusion rules. So if it is a lot of easement, obviously that volatility could be very, very bullish for the semiconductor space. If it is a lot tighter, then obviously it could be very bearish for that market. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Take care, have a good day, and see you all next time.